Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Lake House. Very excited that you guys could be here. This, as you have heard, has been an event in the making for many years, and so glad that it's finally come together. The esteemed panelists are walking onto the stage now, so we'll take a seat, and I will introduce them, and we will get going. So thanks again. All right. You can set that there. All right, so I will quick start with introductions. The focus of the panel today is really around generative AI, but more broadly, artificial intelligence. And we're going to really cover a full spectrum of conversation here. So really talking about what's changed in the last several months. We'll get into where's the market going. Certainly there is, as Sandy did a really nice job talking about all the promise of artificial intelligence, there's also some things that as technology leaders we need to be considering and thinking about as part of that. So before we get started, I will let the panelists introduce themselves. Maybe we start at the end with Dave. Sorry, I'm going out of order already. And your mic's not on. There you go. You can turn all the mics on. We'll behave ourselves.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. Dave Castillo. I'm the firm-wide head of AI technology for JPMorgan Chase. And in that role, I'm responsible for our AI platforms and tooling, some of the automation of controls, the guardrails. We talked a lot about Gen AI today. We've done a lot of effort around how do you actually implement a Gen AI around in a regulated industry like financial services. So that's my role at JPMorgan.
Awesome. Simon.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation, Todd, and thanks for having me here. It's a real honor. So I'm Simon. I run a couple of things at Oracle. One is our hospitality point of sale business, but also all of our common industry infrastructure and tooling, which obviously right now is a long conversation about where we're using AI and how we're applying it to customer problems.
Awesome. Judy?
Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Spitz. I am the very proud founder and executive director of an organization called Breakthrough Tech, which is on a mission to achieve gender equality in the tech industry. But this is work that I do after a very long 30-year career at Verizon, where I was the CIO for their enterprise business unit for the last 10 years of that stint.
And Abran.
Check, check. Oh. Check, check. Hello, hello. Check, check.
Hello, I'm Abran Maldonado, co-founder of Create Labs, ambassador for OpenAI, and developer of Clara, who you'll meet today as well. I'm a generative AI engineer, prompt engineer. Might be one of the first, if not the first, prompt engineer of color in this new space, and here to share some future landscape of where all this space is going today. So it should be fun.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's the panel, and as Abran said, there's actually another panel member that you're gonna meet here towards the end as a surprise. So we'll talk about that. But I think one of the things that is really exciting about the panel is, and it's something that we think about from an AI perspective, is the need for diversity in thinking and thought leadership around how we develop a whole new sets of technologies as we move into the future. And I think this panel, one of the things as we worked to put it together, and I thank Miriam for all of her work in helping pull these folks together on the stage. This is an awesome, diverse set of people with very different views. We had an opportunity to speak this morning over coffee, and just the different backgrounds, the different views, their roles, I think is going to make a very rich and fulfilling panel. So I'll start with questions. We'll certainly have time for plenty of questions from you in the audience. As you know, there are mics both in the front and in the back. So we will make it as conversational as you can with hundreds of people in a large ballroom. But with that, Dave, maybe I'll start back with you on the end. I think one of the things as we talk about artificial intelligence as a community of technologists, most of us recognize it's not necessarily new. It's something we've been talking about for many years, if not decades. But something changed last year. We're coming in on that kind of 12-month range, but something changed kind of at the end of 22, and that's really generative AI. Can you maybe give a little bit of your kind of color commentary on what was that inflection point and where have you seen the market progress?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Todd mentioned, AI has been around certainly for quite some time. It's been in practice for quite some time, and we've already reaped plenty of benefits from machine learning and AI in a sort of traditional sense. And that's industry-wide. Generative AI has also been around actually quite a while. Generative adversarial networks were used to create simulated data for some time. The transformer architecture came out in 2018, 2017, circa 2017, I believe. It kind of changed the way natural language understanding was thought about. And when you started to put all this together, you wound up with something that came out last year or in 22 around ChatGPT that sort of transformed the world. And there was a mad rush, to implement the power that people had never seen before. A lot of people had never seen before. However, we all have also heard the flip side of that. How do you do that in a very responsible manner? And when you're working for someone who's in a regulated industry, who's has an obligation to the financial services community, the customers' well-being within that community, there's an onus on us to actually do to leverage the benefit, of course, but to do it in a very responsible way. And so we've been very busy looking at how do we actually do large language models and generative AI at scale within the firm in a responsible manner, so that we can minimize the potential mistakes that we might make. We can capture that. We can do something about it before it actually goes into practice. And so there's a lot of activity that has been around that effort, and we're happy to say that we've made some great progress around prompting, around content moderation, around being able to pass an audit so that we can log everything, and also doing it in a way where we can protect our highly confidential data.
Awesome. Simon, maybe next question to you. Obviously, being a leader at Oracle, you have a very large customer base using your products today. One of the things I always have conversations with my clients, especially around generative AI, is that even if you decide not to implement generative AI, right, as a specific technology, you're going to implement it because it's coming to you in all of the products that you already have within your business. So specific to Oracle, I think that's a great example where many in the room are probably running Oracle for parts of their business. How are you thinking about AI, specifically generative AI, and how is it finding its way into your product set?
Yeah, it's a funny question, right? Because I think we all sort of think about, how am I going to use this? The reality is everyone in this room, you are consuming and using this technology right now. And companies like ours, the entire industry, and I'm sure many of you are kind of weaving this into the fabric of everything that happens in your organization. And so, wherever you see somewhere that someone starts with a blank piece of paper, right? In our case, that might be in an ERP application where you've already got probably all the information you need, but you need to type up 3 sentences. You're just not going to have to do that anymore, and you're moving people into the role of really a reviewer and an approver, making sure that the model is not creating some sort of odd hallucination, that it kind of manages what the human needs to kind of approve, which is probably some compliance and just sort of the gut check. But that's really getting woven into sort of everything we do, and it's changing the question, right? So, when we all talk about managing products and SaaS products, I think we spend a lot of time on, hey, what's a great design principle to take us from, we use the example of like 10 clicks to 8 clicks in healthcare with a doctor interacting with a patient. And really the opportunity for the technologist is now to say, hey, like, where's my opportunity to take us from 10 to 0, right? And so we're doing that in ERP, we're doing that in industry applications, but it's really being woven into the fabric of, frankly, all of the applications.
Awesome. So maybe Judy, as I go I promise I'm not this much of a linear thinker, but I want to make sure everyone gets their time. So Judy, I think one of my favorite conversations I've had with you over the last several years is the need to bring diverse thinking to how we implement artificial intelligence. And I love what you're doing with Breakthrough Tech. Can you maybe share a little bit of your point of view on that, and specifically how Breakthrough Tech is going to help with some of the talent conversation that Sandy kicked off for us?
Sure. Just to key off what we've been talking about for a minute and then segue to that, we all hear about the issues of algorithmic bias and issues of fairness and ethics and how companies like KPMG and others are trying to manage that. The couple of things that are important to remember. One is algorithmic bias isn't new. It existed in the analog world long before the digital world, much less AI. You may know that the original airbags injured a lot of women and children because of the bias in the assumption about the size of the dummies that they tested it on. You may not know that until recently, artificial hearts only fit into the chest cavities of about 60% of women, and you can imagine why that is. So this has been around. It was around at the beginning of AI. Early speech recognizers did a lousy job of recognizing accented speech and female speech and so on. And we all know why. The data's not representative, the training data. The problem now is the scale and pervasiveness of where that algorithmic bias happens. And it's, of course, the people who are most underrepresented or misrepresented in the data that have the most to lose. Generative AI introduces a whole nother problem, which is not only is it reinforcing the bias in the training data, it can actually make it worse. I just came back from Grace Hopper, where I heard this wonderful speaker talk about image generation. And imagine saying to any one of our new platforms, show me an image of a CEO, of a fast food worker, of a social worker, of a terrorist. So now imagine that this great generative AI is now amplifying, not just biased in the answers and the decisions that it's making, but amplifying it. So to your question and to my passion, I strongly believe that our first line of defense against issues of bias and ethics and fairness is the diversity of the people who are at the table, who are deciding what problems who are deciding, number one, which are the problems that are the most important ones to work on. What is the algorithm optimizing for? A really important question. What does fairness even mean? Who stands to gain and lose? So Breakthrough Tech is an organization that is focused on gender and racial and socioeconomic equity in tech in general, but in the last 2 years we've launched a program specifically focused on the tech training and the opportunity gap for underserved women and non-binary students in undergraduate schools across the country. And we'll talk more about it. I don't want to take up too much time now, but the goal here is to create a bridge between this untapped talent pool, which I'll explain later, and the industry, like the folks in this audience who are actually looking for them, but often say they can't find them. Let me tell you a little secret. Total number of Black and Latina women who graduated with degrees in computer science from the top 25 ranked school where you all recruit from was less than 100 last year. So there is a feeding frenzy in the wrong place, and we can talk more about that.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Abron,
What you got for me?
I got a lot of different questions. I'm not sure where I want to start with. So maybe we'll start with, to mix it up, I want to hear your diversity story because I think that is awesome as well. But you're an ambassador of OpenAI. The folks in the audience hopefully are hearing a lot about OpenAI more broadly. I'd love for you to kind of explain your participation there, what you're seeing as much as you can. And then specifically, one of the things I think a lot of the leaders in this room are starting to grapple with is the clock speed dilemma of technology. How fast is this moving? You know, I just heard about OpenAI and now I'm on the next version. It's coming at us pretty quickly. Interested in kind of your thoughts on where the market is today and where it's going in the near term.
Thank you. Really excited to be here. I was really excited to get my sticker. Shout it out. Boricuas in the house. So Create Labs, when we were founded, we were doing a lot of work with organizations like Breakthrough Tech. Actually, Breakthrough Tech found me, and I'm going to be speaking to those young women in a couple weeks. And then we pivoted to AI during the pandemic. And it was really, I was just nerding out, you know, trying to find what else can I do some R&D on to expose to underserved Black and brown communities. And then I read the paper on GPT-2 being too dangerous for the public. And then I heard about a private beta for GPT-3. Now, this is 3 years ago. And I shot my shot. I was like, look, I do social impact work in the community, would love to get access, see how it applies to our population. And I saw a DM in my inbox on Twitter, and it was from Greg Brockman, the co-founder of OpenAI. It said, give me your email, I'm gonna give you access. I didn't know what I got access to. So I said, sure. And I started talking to the machine, and the machine started talking back. And I knew at that moment, like, oh shit, things are gonna start to change in this world. And they started to see the use cases that I was doing with AI and generative AI, usually around social impact, usually around bias, usually around representation of underserved communities. And they said, do you want to be an ambassador for OpenAI, which means that you'll get access to all of the models, you'll test all of them, and give us feedback. Adversarial test, red teaming is a phrase around trying to break these models for bias. And give us feedback and let us know where we can improve these models. And that's been my relationship with them ever since. So I've been testing DALL-E and GPT before it came out, and now Vision and other models that are coming out. But I also get to see how this work also applies to our population to make sure that it's being done the right way. And we'll see some examples of that later.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Dave, maybe back to you. Interested, we've talked a little bit about the pivot in the market, and you started with that. Anything specifically at JPMC, you've been implementing AI for years, right? What has changed? Has your strategy changed? And where are you? I think a lot of the folks in the room are representatives of large organizations that are embarking in this journey of implementing AI, or more specifically generative AI, as the market has pivoted. Has that changed your strategy? Has it pivoted the types of use cases you're going after? I'm interested in kind of sharing some of your lessons there.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think historically, financial services companies have not been, I would say, characterized as innovators. They're followers. And I think the strategy pivot, not necessarily pivot, but maybe acceleration, is now moving from followers to fast followers, and actually becoming innovators in the space of adoption of Gen AI in regulated industries. And that's really if you think about what's involved there, it's enormous. So we talked a lot here about bias and fairness and ethics and potential damage to your brand, damage to your customers, damage to the financial system. All of those things are daunting if you put any one of them in front of you, but when you put the whole collection in front of you, it becomes kind of mind-blowing. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in at least looking at what are things that we can actually take off the table, and where can we actually accelerate some of the value for our use cases. You hear a lot about fine-tuning a foundational model like a GPT 3.5 or a GPT 4 or Anthropic's models. I think people need to understand what that really means, and the cost of doing that, the time involved, the expertise involved. And yeah, you might have a niche database or a niche set of data that can value add, but it's just an enormous undertaking to do a fine tuning. So people have relied on prompts and prompt engineering. We heard a little bit about that this morning, but also on retrieval augmented generation, or RAG is the buzzword, where you can actually impact a model that has been built maybe a couple years ago, a foundational model with more current data, and ask questions about the current data. And I think when you think about RAG and prompt engineering together, there's a lot of value that you can extract from that. Now, you still have to filter out the bad prompts. You still have to understand, am I being a nefarious character? And I'm trying to direct the Gen AI model to come back with something that I can actually leak to the press and cause damage to my brand. We have to be able to capture those things. And so our focus has been on how do we build a responsible portal to not only OpenAI's work, but also Anthropic's work and others that are embarking on in this space. And there's going to be a lot of niche markets that pop up all over the place, and you have to be in a position to take advantage of these models, but in a very responsible way, being able to moderate the content, being able to understand the prompting, and being able to track everything so that you can pass compliance. And that'll be a common theme about what you hear about us, but I think we are definitely, I see some of the first movers in this space. Everywhere I go and I talk to people about this, it's like, wow, you guys are actually doing something fairly novel in this space, because I think it's easy to sit there and consume and then let the human decide whether or not something is okay to do something with. But when you're actually responsible for all of the stuff that goes with a regulated industry, whether it be healthcare or financial services or others, then it becomes an enormous responsibility. And of course, accountability goes with that.
That's a very good point. Simon, looks
Yeah, I
like
was
you
just
have
going to say,
something
I
to
mean, I
add.
think it's one of the things we all, as sort of people in this industry, have to ask ourselves, right? Which is, where are we willing to kind of put this to work? Where do we think we can kind of manage our organizational risk, probably even some of our own personal risk, right, as we implement new use cases? And I think, in our case, and Adriana, my colleague from Oracle, is working right now on like, hey, how do we just internally think about really large pools of data, summarizing them, sort of helping the team using these models as a way to get kind of managing some of that risk, getting an organization sort of used to just the concept of what we're doing here before you really go wild and start thinking about like customer-facing things, sort of unreviewed items. And that's really, I think, the decision each of you have to make in your business is like, hey, how am I going to roll this out? How am I going to manage some of my risk, some of the organizational risk as I put this stuff to work?
Maybe follow up to that, Simon. You work in hospitality, but also cover broader industry for Oracle. Any variations in industry? Where are folks getting started? Where do you think the most promise is?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We've had lots of small use cases. So if I think about in the fast food example, we have kiosks that are running when you're touching one part of the screen. The next screen, unfortunately, if you have a weakness for fried foods, is going to kind of guide you to something that you're probably going to want, right? And that's based on a lot of math and a lot of science that's kind of happening locally at the device. As a company, certainly, the biggest bet I think we're making right now is really on healthcare and on sort of an effort of where technology can kind of fix some of the really endemic problems with healthcare globally. And so some of the biggest use cases for us, we presented 2 weeks ago a model that basically gets the computer out of the patient-doctor relationship and really allows kind of a one-to-one relationship with the computer being the note taker, the generator of the follow-up, and really the doctor having like an individual assistant for every patient that is sort of tracking their care through the process, and it's hugely powerful. If we think as a company of the impact we can have on kind of humans on the planet, that's probably one of the biggest ones. And it's sort of a risky one in some ways, right? We're talking about healthcare, so that the test, the bar is very high. But we have some really big models like that, right, where we're trying to fundamentally alter how you interact with someone. And then we've got much smaller models, which are little functional use cases that are tuning a business process, improving someone's kind of interactions with you in really small ways that aggregate up into big time savings or big improvements.
Awesome. Judy?
Yeah, I just want to jump in terms of companies actually getting the value out of this amazing technology. And what I've seen historically over my career, and I see it happening in AI also, is what I think of as sort of bolting the technology onto your business. Those of you who've been around long enough, when cloud became the buzzword and all our big companies, Verizon included, needed to move our systems to the cloud because we wanted to get the benefits of rapid deployment and delivery and automated failover and all that stuff. What did we do? We did what was called lift and shift. We took our legacy systems for our data centers and just plopped them in the cloud and then expected something transformational to happen. No, it didn't. We had to fundamentally redesign the way we built those systems and deployed them. Same thing happened with mobile apps. What did we all do? We took our web's apps and stuck them on the phone and expected something amazing to happen. It didn't. I've seen this happening in AI and contact centers, which was my space for a long time at Verizon. What have people been doing for the last 20 years? Taking automated technology and sticking it on the outside of the contact center to just try to prevent your customers from getting in, and then throwing it over the wall when it fails. It doesn't work that way, and it's not going to work that way today. What's required is to fundamentally redesign your business process in a way that incorporates the technology, not just to bolt it on the outside. And I think, big companies like Oracle and KPMG get it, but the vast majority of companies, that is a big hill to climb, but it's the way we're going to get from the hype cycle to real transformational results.
Absolutely. That is an excellent point. Abran, maybe back to you. I think what we're seeing in the market today is a lot of organizations talking about use case specific. Let me understand generative AI. How's it going to impact my workforce, my operating model? I loved our conversation over the last couple days on Create Labs, and you're looking at actually the disruption of your business model, right? Can you maybe share a little bit, because I think that is a great lesson for the folks in the room to think about the power of where AI can take your business to fundamentally disrupt what you do. Love to hear your story on kind of what Create Labs' journey has been as an organization from driving diversity to AI and then the merging of those two.
So what's helped us is that we've stayed industry agnostic. So we love hearing all the different pain points and use cases for different industries, and sometimes it even helps us because we'll build an infrastructure in generative AI for one industry and find out, oh, this same infrastructure can apply to this other one. Something that we built for advertising can help education. Something that we built for education can help fintech. And sometimes it's a discovery session, a call with a CAO and a whole team. I've had up to 15, 20 people on a call where we discover 10 to 20 use cases of how this could really automate processes, make things more efficient, improve the bottom line or cut costs down. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, now we've discovered it. Now pick one. Let's either go with the low-hanging fruit that's low risk, or let's make a big splash. And sometimes when they go low risk, it becomes deprioritized and it becomes like an R&D project that doesn't get a lot of steam. Or the other way, it's more risk because more eyeballs, but the CMO can take it to Cannes and they can get a lot of press out of it and create a big splash from a marketing perspective for a use case that they can trust. But whether you do it in-house or whether you hire a company like me, what's most important that we've all kind of touched on is not only designing the prompt for what you want it to do, but what you want it not to do, right? And setting those guardrails and having layers before it reaches the consumer, before it reaches the output of saying, okay, come up here, do the input, put it in, the output. Now check the output for the instructions to make sure that you've provided me what I asked for. And then you can have now, with these agents, another bot that's checking your work before it's then released to the output, to the end user. So you can have multiple ChatGPTs, I guess, working in tandem together. And one is like a quality control, one is processing the prompt, one is fetching the data, and all of these are all working together before you get that final result. So it can be very creative in how you use these tools, but we specialize in that additional layer, what we call embeds, vector databases, and doing a semantic search of just that, not the foundational layer, the specific nuanced layer that you've created with the expertise that you wanted to source for that answer, and making sure that it's clean data and you have buy-in on where that data is coming from.
Excellent. Maybe we can do a quick unscientific poll, as I like to do. Show of hands, how many people currently at your employer have access to generative AI, either through public or through a private server? Okay. And then is the inverse, it's shut off, raise of hand, like who does not have access? Couple out there. So Dave, maybe we flip the script here to all the good, the promise, where we're using it, to some of the concerns, challenges, right? You referenced a couple times regulatory environment, obviously who you are, and since you are my bank, I appreciate your stance on this. But do want to hear from you. How are you getting both the regulators and your own leadership team comfortable? What are you hearing as some of the risks, and how are you kind of mitigating those to move forward?
So first of all, we don't, within the firm, we don't allow direct access within our corporate environments. We don't allow direct access to ChatGPT. We have built a portal to ChatGPT and we have 3 offerings of that, and they're covering kind of the things that I talked about earlier around doing it in a responsible manner. The other thing that we're involved in, though, is we have an ethics group, we have a regulatory group, we have a team of lawyers. So we're looking at how do we protect ourselves and protect our customers in the event that we have, maybe there's IP issues, there's copyright infringement, there's other kinds of factors that need to be considered on top of the regular stuff like bias and fairness that we mentioned earlier. So this idea is that we have a responsible portal that we can allow traffic to go through any one of these models. And then from there, we can actually assess how we want to either bring the content back. And as Abram said, that there are models that actually look at the output of other models. And then if you think about some of the work that's being done with co-pilots in coding, and co-pilots in even data science, co-pilots in virtually anything you can think of, having a co-pilot alongside you is really interesting. I know I personally now, I teach at the University of Maryland Global Campus and Computer Science AI courses, and I always have my co-pilot with me, and no matter what I do, I'm bouncing stuff off my co-pilot, whether it be an algorithm that I'm trying to write, or maybe it's something on first-order logic. But I've changed the whole way that I even teach the students, and I encourage the students to use these kinds of technologies because they are game changers, and they will change the way that people are going to live their lives in the future. So back to your question, there's a very multidimensional approach that we're doing, and part of that includes bringing the regulators in, showing them the evidence of how we're actually implementing generative AI within the firm, and getting them familiar and warmed up to the fact that this is coming, but this is the way that we're going to maintain our ability to be compliant in terms of the regulatory framework.
Awesome, that's great. And I'm going to go out of order, so look, I can do it. Judy, he said teach and students, and I saw you beaming over there. So I wanted to make sure you have an opportunity to talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts, which is we can't build technologies of tomorrow that are going to be unbiased and look like this country if we don't have diversity in the people that are building those technologies. So can you kind of share your points of view on that?
Sure. Thanks for that. So I made reference a few minutes ago about the small number of Black and Latina women in computer science graduating from top 25 schools. Here are the numbers. There are 170,000 women studying computer science in this country. 150,000 of them, 92%, go to schools outside the top 25 ranked schools. There are 37,000 Black, Latina, and Native American women studying computer science and related disciplines. 36,000 of them, 97%, go to schools outside the top 25 ranked schools. There's a feeding frenzy amongst all of our companies in a pool that's about this big when the talent you're fishing for is in a different pond altogether. But the problem is they're scattered across 1,300 different universities, and you can't possibly have relationships with all of them. And in AI in particular, the talent and the knowledge to train those students in advanced machine learning for those entry-level jobs isn't there. Now, just like you hire an executive recruiting firm to find executives, or you may partner with an apprenticeship firm to run an apprenticeship program, that's what we do. Breakthrough Tech runs an organization where we go out and we find those undergraduate women, we over-index on Black, Latina, first-gen, and low-income women who have the potential to contribute to this field but don't have the privilege of going to one of these top-ranked schools. We train them in a summer program in machine learning industry tools, and then we set them up in portfolio building machine learning projects with companies like yours, both to give them the resume juice that they need to get through your resume screeners, but also to introduce you to students you're not going to meet otherwise. Our biggest challenge, I'll tell you right now, we're the largest organization doing this in the country. We have over 500 women in the cohort this year. We're going to have over 1,000 next year. The biggest challenge is scaling the industry partners that we have to put these students in for group-related machine learning projects. So I'm here to tell you, if you run a summer internship program, your company has the wherewithal to host our students in one of our innovative programs. We find them, we vet them, we work with you on how to design a challenge project, and it helps both you and the company. I think it's the only way we're going to solve this problem.
100%.
So I will shamelessly say, go to breakthroughtech.org, get involved, or connect with me on LinkedIn, because this is our scaling problem.
Judy's going to be in the back with a sign-up sheet for the audience at the end of this. Just real quick endorsement. We've been, I think, one of the first cohorts we welcomed several years ago and have been part of the program since. And I got to tell you, I take the opportunity for each cohort to spend a little bit of time. I hear the readout of the challenge projects that we give them on AI. It has been an awesome experience and a source for just some wonderful talent into our data science and artificial intelligence consulting business. So Judy, thank you for your leadership in that space. It's certainly something that I think is important for everyone in this room. Simon, I know that I skipped you, so I'm going to come back to you. All right. So Dave touched on the regulatory environment. Obviously, your role at Oracle, building these technologies, you guys need to be very close to what's happening globally from a regulation perspective to stay in lockstep. How are you seeing that market evolve, both globally, US? I know that's a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, at risk of posing a whole bunch of problems without a solution, I mean, the challenge we have is that all of these things are moving at vastly different speeds. And so I was having a conversation last week that was really around the legal aspect. I mean, that is going to take years, country by country, frankly, to really get litigated, to sort out what policy looks like, what the law is going to look like. On the ethics side, I think we're all trying to sort out, really how do we want these things to work? How do we want people to interact with them? What's our sort of take on the long-term privacy, intellectual property ownership rights, all of these questions. In the meantime, the tech world, we're moving a million miles an hour. All of you are excited about this. We want to adopt it. And so country by country, right, everyone is having this discussion. And so the challenge for all of us in global businesses is going to be, how do we actually manage a set of regulations, a set of kind of policies, a set of practices that's going to be hundreds of companies wide. I was talking to someone in Switzerland a month ago who's building a Swiss domestic language model, right? And so you're going to have to figure out how to interact with that if you're doing business there. And so, there's massive potential here. We are hugely optimistic about the power here, but the question is, it's going to become very, very complicated. It's moving very, very quickly, and so we all have to have, or be at least ready to figure out how we're going to sort of evolve with it and how we're going to manage this, because it is going to be both national, there's going to be lots of policy implications, and we're all going to have to manage and deal with that.
Awesome. So I think there's the here and now, right? When you think about using the technology today, right? Dave and Simon just gave you some really good examples of what you need to be thinking about. I think one of the conversations from a technology perspective we always get into in artificial intelligence is where's this going, right? What is the future of humanity, I think? What is the future of society as we start to interact with more artificial intelligence? Abran, you and I have had several very interesting conversations on this topic, specifically about what is the future of humanity. I think you and I joked this morning about there are no Hollywood movies that come out that have a utopian future. They're all dystopian. And then my question back to him was, well, then maybe we can use generative AI to shop a script to Hollywood that has a good ending. WALL-E was the closest, but I wouldn't say WALL-E was actually, the ending was good, but it was pretty sad up into there. So how are you thinking about this, specifically as the creator of AI in Clara that we're going to meet next? But as you're teeing up Clara, maybe give your perspective on your responsibility to creating Clara and how you see this evolving, kind of what it means to be human.
So we created Clara organically. We created it as a demo. We rolled it out to the community, and we saw the reaction. And when we created Clara, she had to be us. We're Black and Latino founded. We're from the community, so if we were going to create a robot or a Jarvis or what have you, it had to look like us. And there's a history behind that. I do know Sophia, the AI robot, and her team, Hanson Robotics, and we did try to bring her to Harlem and to Compton, but she's a little scary. She got like bolts in the back of her head. She's bald. Like, I wasn't bringing that to Harlem. So when I was building my own, I was like, she's got to look like us, plain and simple. She's got to look like the women that raised me and my brothers and sisters and my titis. So when we built her, it was for that purpose. Shout out to Amber Ivy. She has a podcast, AI Decodes. She was interviewing me about Clara and then volunteered to be her voice because she knew that we wanted a culturally authentic voice for Clara as well. So representation is embedded in everything that we do at Create Labs. And then we see the reactions from the young people when we go into communities. It just further validates why we did that. And also seeing us and in knowing that they have someone on the inside that knows where the off switch is to all this stuff before they start taking over. So when I go back to the hood, they're like, yo, you doing all the crazy stuff now? I'm like, someone's got to know where the switch is to turn it off. You know what I mean? Like, we got to have somebody on the inside. You would never get Wakanda if we weren't building our own kind of AI.
That is a great change strategy. But
Yeah.
but I know where the switch is.
I know where the switch
Awesome.
is, yes.
Awesome. So maybe we can queue up Clara, and you can introduce her to the audience.
Everybody meet Clara.
Hello, Clara.
So this is the part where my heart beats out of my chest because I'm connected to conference Wi-Fi to make all this work. So she responds in real time, and I guess her tech stack, her foundational layer is 4, but like I said, it's been 3 years of an additional knowledge base on top of 4 of just her interactions with people, thousands of people from around the world, over 3 years to kind of develop her own persona, her own identity. So she's not a product, she's just her own personal, identity, and she's a virtual influencer. We decide when and when not to collaborate with a particular brand or a particular use case for an event. And she responds in real time through TTS and STT, text to speech and speech to text, lip sync, processing all that in real time. So that's where I hold my breath when you ask her a question, and then we see if the Wi-Fi works. So I think we're open to taking a question from the audience if we want to do that, and then see how she responds. So how do you want to do that?
You
want to get people walk up to the mics,
Any
or
questions?
Yeah, I guess there's mics around the room. Oh, everyone's scared. Yeah, everyone does this at first. Like, I don't want to do it. All right. We got one.
Go.
Okay. All right, so the way that this works, when I press the button on the computer, you see the green dot, that means she's listening. So I don't know if she's going to hear you from there, so I might have to repeat it from here. So why don't you tell me your question, and I'll repeat it here.
I wanted to ask her what she thinks the future of AI is for Hispanics, but I'd love for her to answer it in Spanish. Can she do that?
Let's see. Damn. All right, the easy one, right? You toss up the easy one out front?
A really easy one.
All right, let's see. Clara, what's the impact of AI for Hispanics? Can you please answer in Spanish? She's moving a little slow. So we'll see how this comes out. Oh, no. Oh, we couldn't get an Ethernet cable, huh? Oh, yeah, it's choppy. Well, you can read it, right? Hold on. Let's see. The voice will come out if it's working.
El impacto de la inteligencia artificial para la comunidad hispana es significativo y prometedor. La IA puede ayudar a abordar desafíos específicos como el acceso a la educación de calidad, atención médica mejorada y oportunidades laborales más equitativas.
Did that work? Anybody want to translate? Okay, that worked. It was good? Oh, that's a good idea. Can you translate in English? All right, let's see.
Now would be a good time to talk about the computational processing required to do it.
Yeah.
And the chip shortage.
We'll put her on Oracle, maybe.
Simon appreciates that comment.
Yeah, I know he does. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the back end to make all this work.
The impact of artificial intelligence for the Hispanic community is significant and promising. AI can help address specific challenges such as access to quality education, improved healthcare, and more equitable job opportunities. Additionally, it can open up new doors in sectors like e-commerce and communications, providing greater potential for economic growth and inclusion.
All right. That worked.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a good one. So just to break down how this works, so there's a text. So what she represents, right? She's not a product, but there's an evolution happening, right? You're going from, they gave you just up until a year, a little less than a year, to get used to interacting with a conversational AI over text before they introduced voice. Right now, voice, you're going to see ChatGPT voice coming out within the next few months. And then having a conversation with ChatGPT in your car, on your walks, you know, this is going to be something that you're going to get used to. And then having something that's embodied as a person is probably 2 to 5 years out, where everyone has a Clara, or you start to interact with celebrities in the form of a Clara as digital humans or digital twins. And if any of you watched the Meta, okay, all right. Buenas noches, Clara, see you later. So when you saw Meta's presentation, that's where they're headed, right? So it's going to be interesting, but I just want to make sure that you're all ahead of it and not taken off guard. But thank you. That was great. That worked.
Awesome. All right, so Clara had to take a quick nap as she re-energizes herself, probably at the coffee bar. Miriam, it looks like you're at the mic. Questions for the flesh-based
I have
panelists?
a question, and that was, I'm glad to meet Clara. When Avram first talked to me about her, I was like, yeah, right. So now I got to see her live. Hopefully she'll come back to life. Judy, I have a question for you. The changing workforce, the work that you're doing through Breakthrough Tech, what is going to be the killer app that's going to get the numbers of women and people of color into tech? I know that this is your life's work now, and you talked about 100 graduates from the top 24 schools, right? You said 100, which is sad. Yesterday, or the day before, at Latitude, I heard someone say that every 18 seconds in the United States, a Latino or Latina turns 18, every 30 seconds. So that means we have this incredible growth of the Latino population and youth moving into college and careers. I know it's a long-winded question, but it's all about what is it going to take to get these numbers up? And I know, of anyone I know, you know how to do it. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Miriam. And of course, I'm here, and I know Todd, and we work with KPMG all because of Miriam. She and I were partners when I was at Verizon, and we were one of your accounts. So back to the conversation that Nellie said, or you guys talked about earlier about relationships matter. So first of all, we have a move across this country. You hear it all the time about no college degree required. I'm a big cynic about that. When I hear the CEO of a company tell their kid that they don't need to go to college, then I'll believe it. And while this is a yes and, our non-traditional paths and apprenticeship programs good for adult learners? Of course they are. But boot camps, all that stuff. But the problem is what I was describing, which is the pipeline is there. They're just invisible to most of the hiring engines. Just like I said about the bolt-on technology, this is the same thing is happening in tech talent recruitment. We can't attach a D&I objective to an HR talent recruitment organization that's doing business the way it always did and expect a different outcome. Absolutely. Not going to happen. We have to fundamentally rethink how we recruit and how we give opportunities for and how we retain this diverse tech talent. So my point is number one, there are, as I said, hundreds of thousands of women and Black and Latina women in particular that are doing exactly what society has told them to do. They're in undergraduate school. They're studying computer science. There's no bridge between them and the hiring engines. So we serve on that side to get them trained up and give them the experiences that they need. But there has to be a reinvention of the way we are recruiting tech talent if you expect to get students and new employees who look different than they've always looked before. You have to look for different things on resumes. You have to open up innovative opportunities. As Todd referred to, we run a Sprinternship program. It's a 3-week micro internship. You bring the students in during an academic break, you pay them for 3 weeks, you give them some resume juice, and you get introduced to a talent population you have no access to. That's what I think has to happen. We cannot keep recruiting talent the same we always have and expect to find this huge potential pipeline.
Can I touch on that, Judy? So I sat in that bridge for a minute, helping organizations like Breakthrough get into relationships and partnerships with corporate partners for hiring. And one example of what she's touching on, for those who are graduating from boot camps, they were getting through boot camps in like 6 months, 6 to 9 months, but there was a minimum requirement from every company for at least 2 years. So everyone that was applying from a boot camp automatically fell into the D&Q and never even made it into a resume stack to even get an interview because they were automatically disqualified because they were graduating too fast. So you have to revisit your JD's minimum requirements and see if you're cutting some people out.
I'll just give you this data point. Students who've gone through some of these unique programs went from landing a summer internship success rate of under 10% to over 60%.
Awesome.
So if you lean in, you can make it happen.
Simon, it looks like you had something to
I
add.
know one of the things certainly at Oracle we talk about is nothing changes unless it becomes totally incumbent upon the hiring manager to demand this, right? That you have to see resumes, and if you're not doing that, like, if the demand doesn't change, nothing happens on the supply.
Absolutely.
I'll
Any-
say just one quick question.
We have a question over there.
I still think it's incumbent upon all of us here and our networks that we have to do something about it as well. We have to start to become mentors and open and show the art of possible to people. We don't have enough formal momentum, if you will, and programs, and I still think it's going to be kind of get out there and scratch and kick and fight. We have to do that ourselves. We have to show the art of possible, and I know that's how I believe, and even if you can change the life of one person, it's worth it.
Awesome. I know we have a question here.
Oh, thank you. My name is Natalie Hill. I work with AWS, with GenAI, with my great customers. Any other technology is arising. Wanted to share a comment. So you mentioned there's few hundreds of people, Latinas, especially Latinas, going to. So I graduated from both on grad school, Carnegie Mellon, and MIT. That's completely possible. If you have any mentee or intern that's going through that, call me. I can give them some tips to how to get there. So I think this is important to share, not because I'm just want to share about that, but because it's possible. So you need some models that are able to do that. I'm going to the question right now, which is a lot of organizations, they have good guidelines in terms of responsible AI. Startups is also super aware about responsible AI. We as individuals having all these guidelines, how can we execute better if we are builders, decision makers, or consumers? What's the best advice for us if we have all these things going on? Thank you.
Do we want to take a stab at that one?
I mean, I think from my perspective at least, right, it is starting narrow, starting in ways that you are able to kind of enforce those policies or your beliefs or your opinions on what you're building, right, before you really turn the machine up and let it run. And at least right now, that's really the only way. I think, Abraham's example of like having a model, following the model, that's all coming. But for now, let it out of the barn slowly is probably the best piece of advice I could give.
I think you hit on an interesting point on consumers that we didn't really talk about. I got a text from my wife yesterday. It's a long story. And my daughter came home from school where she's 12, and they covered like AI and acceptable use and policy. And she was removing all of the Apple devices, the Amazon, the Alexa. Like, she's like, Mom, I don't want these in the house anymore, right? So, like, okay. So it reminds me of, from a consumer perspective, I think our mindset as these technologies become more advanced is going to change our point of view on what is appropriate, what's not. Where's my data? We haven't even talked about IP as one of the concerns, but as a consumer, like, I think you're going to start thinking about your data in a very different way, right? And I think most organizations that obviously are B2C are going to have to think about the privacy around each of us as a consumer, our data, how it's used, and make sure it's doing it for good and being value add. Otherwise, I think that could turn pretty quickly. And that can be we can scrap this afternoon and do that as a panel, maybe? No, probably not. But looks like we have another question over here.
If you don't mind.
Oh.
Over in the back, the tiny
Sorry.
person.
Okay. There you go. Can't see back there. There you go.
I just wanted to touch on one point, because you're talking about reimagining. But it seems to some extent that we're propagating the same type of mindset. When we talk about where we're finding talent and where we're finding the students, there seems to be this really big focus on individuals that are specifically looking into computer science. And I think that we probably need to talk a little bit about, and I'm curious your thoughts on this as well, but is it really about focusing on computer science? Or is it more around looking at what are the changes that need to happen in curriculum from the earliest stages all the way up to university and leading into the hiring pipeline? And how we are building this into the DNA of everything that we're doing and learning, and how the people in this room and the corporations can use the individuals here to help the educators, the school systems, et cetera, have the knowledge and information they need in order to help change the curriculum, rather than, we talked about bolting on, right? Instead of bolting on, how are we really changing the paradigm?
So I love the question. I completely agree with you. I've been in this space for about a half dozen years. If you think industry is hard to change, it's nothing compared to the education system. Doesn't mean it's not worth trying. I work with a lot of people who are focused on computational thinking as being pervasive in the K through 12 space, as opposed to just an hour of code. And in the higher ed space, there's a big movement toward, you can call it X plus CS or CS plus X. In other words, it doesn't matter what your discipline is, to be able to teach an understanding about algorithmic thinking, about data analytics and so forth, whether you're majoring in art history or biology or sociology, it doesn't matter. And there are a lot of higher education institutes that are working on this. We are working on this with higher ed. It's just a big hill to climb. There is a big move to get industry to lean in and to volunteer their time, almost a national movement, Peace Corps-like, in order to bring the latest thinking in technology into those institutions, because I can tell you faculty talent in advanced technology is a challenge in and of itself, especially diverse faculty.
Awesome. I apologize. There are more questions than we have time. We are actually out of time. But I will commit to the folks that are so brave to ask questions. Most of us, if not all of us, will be around for the rest of the sessions today, tomorrow. So please find us. I would love to answer those questions. I just want to be respectful of the agenda. So with that said, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank each of you. Dave, Simon, Judy, Abran, thank you. This was, I think, one of the first panels that I've had where we had more questions than we had time to get to. So appreciate the participation. And thank you, Clara. We look forward to seeing you later. So thank you. Appreciate it. Can we do it? All right. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. So a quick segue. I will introduce the next speaker. You have heard the commitment that KPMG has made to technology, to artificial intelligence, and to our investments. And I couldn't be more proud to introduce someone that Miriam and I have known for most, if not our entire careers, someone who has been instrumental in developing the technology business here at KPMG. Recently, as of yesterday, I believe was his first official job, we've created a new role within KPMG that is the vice chair for artificial intelligence and digital innovation. So with that said, I'd like to invite to the stage Steve Chase. who is going to talk a little bit about what we at KPMG are doing in AI. So Steve.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
So, wow, that was an excellent panel. I get to go to these. I get to go to a lot of these. Sometimes I'm speaking. It's rare that I get a free lunch out of that. But that panel was excellent. I mean, in the topics, I felt like we had 3 potential like hour-long panels we could have had. First, I just want to say, I know you're going to keep getting welcome to the lake house, and you're going to hear all about it and whatnot. If you're here and you don't use the gym, you're missing out on something. Partly because the food just keeps coming. It just keeps coming and coming and coming, and this is the worst place for my diet. I was much thinner before Lake House showed up. So the other thing I want to do is thank Miriam for just all of the sponsorship that she's shown. She is, I mean, for any of you who've worked with Miriam, what a bright light she is and how she just drives things. I feel like I've also been to about 5 or 10 of her retirement dinners and have spoken about her. What I do want to say is she gave me an impossible brief. She said, hey, I need you to summarize this excellent panel, and I need you to do no slides, and I need you to be pretty funny, but but I need you to be really on point as well. And we'll see how it goes. First off, I'm going to say it again. That panel was excellent. This problem of diversity in the workforce is all through. It's throughout. It's not just in the technology profession. We're having trouble accessing the diverse workforce for accountants. And in fact, frankly, if you know somebody who wants to become an accountant, this is a great time because a lot of kids aren't choosing that. I don't know why. But they aren't. I mean, it's actually quite a crisis in our profession is that not enough folks choosing that. And so if you want a really high-value career, that's an excellent place to start. I also was just reflecting on, has there ever been, I mean, this is an illustrious group of technologists that are in this room. Some of the, some people who are very famous for what they've done. Some are very famous, who will be very famous for what they're going to do. Some of us have been in this career for longer than others, but I don't think we've ever seen technology like what's coming. And I don't think we've ever seen it come at this pace. And if that's true, and I believe it firmly that it's true, we're moving into a moment where technology is again leading the discussion about what is business going to be. And that is one of the reasons why I was asked to step into this role. It's one of the reasons I agreed to take it is in disruption kind of has a negative connotation. A way I hear that is this is a chance to remake the scoreboard a little bit, right? In a lot of ways that can happen with companies. We're the 4th of the big 4. We'll be the 1st of the big 4 potentially if we get it right in this time. But it's also that for careers as well. And one of the things I was I was jotting down a bunch of notes, but when Judy was speaking, I was thinking, if this really is that big transformation moment, and I believe it is, well, how do we make sure we have the right diversity on those teams? How do we raise people up and get them right on those teams that are occurring? Because I suspect KPMG is not the only firm that is launching an enterprise-wide and global transformation driven by the opportunity in AI. I suspect we're not the only one. I suspect many of you are working on that right now, thinking about how do you mobilize, and you're putting your team together. Who's on your team? Is it the same 10 people? It's always the same, like those people who were working on the Watson project or who did the machine learning project 30 years ago, potentially. There's a role for a lot of people. Let's make the tent a little bigger and think about how diverse it can be. We'll get better results. I'm not sure I can read my own handwriting. A couple of other thoughts. So I get interviewed a lot, and they're all waiting for me to say, "Oh, we're going to cut a bunch of jobs." That's what that's going to be the headline. Sometime I'm going to slip up, and it's going to be like the headline. But I actually don't believe that. I do believe this is the greatest moment in productivity change for knowledge workers that we will have seen. And it's an odd thing. I saw James Cameron speak at Workday Rising last week, and he was talking about Luddites in the textile industry and equating it to knowledge workers and what's going on. So we're definitely going through that moment. But I think most businesses, if they get this right, are actually going to see explosive growth. Growth creates opportunity. Opportunity means lots of hiring. We also have, deficits of resources in the workforce anyway, and we're all trying to hire and get the best talent. So no, I don't see it that way. What I do know, though, is the point that was made about I have a co-pilot, the person with a co-pilot is going to beat the person who doesn't have one, right? And so so the people who will be losing jobs and the companies that are going to be losing out are the companies that aren't augmenting their workforce, especially knowledge workers, because it's proven, you know, whether it's the call center study that was done, or recently there was a study in HR that was done. We've run our own tests. 15 to 20% opportunity in productivity, and it's especially lifting up people who are not as experienced as others. So a remarkable opportunity for folks you're bringing into the workforce to get them productive quicker. And that's what most people, and then especially in technology jobs, as much as 40 to 50% improvement with the augmented programmers. We're going to be able, and the way programming is changing right now, it's so dynamic. And I don't know, some of you may have seen last week, there was a trial of, I think it was ChatGPT's vision product, and it was someone took a picture of something they'd drawn on a whiteboard. They took that and converted it to code directly. I don't know how it works. That's not my responsibility in all this. We have a lot of smart people who are going to figure out how that works. We're in a moment that's changing so fast that what's coming tomorrow is stuff that we haven't really even thought about, and we haven't taken advantage of it yet today. And that's one of the messages I keep bringing to our organization is, yes, it's a technology change, but the technology has been getting easier because of all the investments we've made in cloud and data and mobile, the SaaS platforms that we have. That technology is getting easier. Change management of the people is still one of the long poles in the tent. Now, how do you get everybody to come along for this ride? Sandy talked about it, and by the way, that was an excellent presentation. I couldn't have asked her to do a better setup for what we're trying to do in terms of our transformation than what Sandy was talking about. But we've got to bring that, group along. I think we've heard a few different times work is transforming. What are we creating? Are we creating productivity for the work groups or a bunch of pickleball time for the individuals? And how are we going to make sure we create the productivity? And I think this is a moment for HR to really be a business partner with us, and for business leaders to be thinking is, those roles that we have are arbitrary in the organization. The current construction of an org chart probably is changing. There's new roles that likely need to be in around data curation or other things that need to come to pass. But if you don't go through with workforce planning, workforce shaping, skill, job design, and what have you, the marketing organization that you've really disrupted, but you haven't really, what have you taken out of it? And this is one of the first times, I'm a process consultant by background, right? I've done large systems, workflow systems and whatnot. The way you go to productivity enhancement of a knowledge worker who doesn't really spend all day long in a workflow. They're in lots of different workflows, and everybody's talking about use cases, and I think those are important. We've got hundreds that we can talk about, but really we're in a productivity movement right now, and so if in a general productivity movement. So we were talking about reshaping how an individual spends their day as a marketing associate, not how they do this one thing related to advertising. How do they spend their whole day? How do they spend their week? What do they do over a month? And thinking about how you redesign the work that way. Let's see what else I got out. Oh, bold and responsible. We need to be, if it's true, and I believe it is, that the augmented employee is beating the non-augmented employee, well then, we all want to win, so we need to put that skills, capabilities, and we make that technology available as quickly as we can, but we need to do it responsibly. And one of the reasons you put guardrails up on highways is so you can go faster, right? So if you think about it that way, like race car drivers apparently drive, and I don't know this for a fact, but apparently drive with a foot on the brake and a foot on the gas. Anybody watch that Drive to Survive thing, F1? So why do they do that? They can go faster, right? And that's one of the biggest decisions KPMG made when we decided we were going to go really fast, was to create a tiger team of all the right stakeholders who could decide what's the right way to put this technology in place. What are the things we need to be watching out for? How do we ensure we don't exfiltrate a bunch of data? How do we make sure we don't lose competitive advantage while we're doing that, and et cetera? And it's worked great. I got a text before I went on from one of our consultants who said, we're awesome at getting this into our clients' hands, usually not so great getting it into our own. This is a very different situation where we've been able to move really fast with getting lots of generative models in the hands of our folks. I mentioned HR, sort of the rise of the age of workforce shaping, value targeting. If it's enterprise-wide, how do you decide where to focus, right? How do you decide where the biggest opportunities are? That's why you get back to things like use cases and what have you. And I do believe, when you're talking about training models and vector databases and embedded stuff, you're going to have to absolutely decide, because it's real money to be spent and it's got to be sustained. At the same time, I don't think any company we're talking to, including KPMG, has invested enough in just putting the general capabilities out and training everybody how to use it. There's a deficit right now. And if you're not using it every day, you're probably not able to lead your own organization through productivity as well. So that's another message we leave with folks is. And so I know there was a point on the panel, we can all have differences of opinion about move slow. I wouldn't move slow necessarily as it relates to the broad user enablement. But as you think about, running POCs and specific work groups and things you're going to do, that I would wholeheartedly agree with. Prompt crafting or prompt engineering. I like prompt crafting because it sounds like everybody can do it. That is a skill. We all need it. We all need to learn how to do it. It turns out that you can use your generative tool to actually help you write prompts as well. I didn't know that, but I learned that over time. It's been really interesting over the last this last period. And then making sure that we become a learning organization, so that if you're in a work group, sharing those learnings with the folks that you work with. I was going to maybe share just a bit about why I decided to take this role, which I think I've presaged, which is I really do believe this is, I saw a recent guy talk about this is the last transformation. I don't believe that at all. I think this is part of a transformation that has been ongoing. But it's a big one, and it's combinatory, and what's coming next is probably even better. We're talking about RAG and the next thing and the next thing. These things are building up on top of each other, and I believe every organization needs to systematically get good at taking that innovation and bringing it into the workforce, into this ongoing transformation journey we find ourselves on, and to build that muscle. And that's really what I signed up to go do, and that's what I'm excited to go do. And when I mention it's an enterprise transformation, here are the 5 domains that we're looking at where we think we can make material change. And I think every organization can do it in these 5 areas. How we market and sell our products, how we think about new products and our existing products. Oh, look at that, there's my slide. I told you, Miriam, I apologize, I had to have a slide. How we market and sell our services, the services we sell. So there's some brand new services that are available to us. But there are also a whole stack of how do you do, like clients come to us with questions. How should I run my tax department? How do I get ready for the audit? We need to have those answers in an AI world and be able to explain that to them. So the services we sell, both the ones that we sell today, how those will be retrofitted for an AI world, and the brand new ones that are enabled by these different delivery models. Next is service delivery. This is probably the place we've made the most, direct impact, and you likely can in your organization too. If you think about everything you do as a service, what is the best way that you can deliver that? And a lot of people, especially in the services industry, have thought about, offshoring or nearshoring or what have you. There's a real opportunity right now to think about how do I bring those services back and domesticate those with an entirely different way of delivery. That also includes all the delivery tooling and the stuff that is coming out in terms of how you do everything from building an interface to testing the code to preparing for an audit, to doing an internal audit, whatever. It's just incredible, the tools that we're able to put in the team's hands. The next one, number 4, I'm going to call that a strategy process we all need to go through. And that is, how is the business going to change? And where am I most likely to be disrupted by these changes? And take your divisions through that on a sort of continual basis if you believe in this continuous transformation journey. And the last one is just how you run whatever the business is, including the divisions and at the enterprise level. For us, this is a global program. It's also a US program. I lead the US program. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it at any time. Before I go, and I know I'm right on time, is how much I appreciate this opportunity to have spoken to HITEC. You represent really the best and brightest in the technology industry, and we're so pleased to get to work with you and have been a partner. And thanks, and appreciate you coming to our house to learn a little bit about who we are and our culture, which I hope you see in all the hallways you pass and the people you see.